In this tutorial, we are going to build this sign-up form from scratch using just HTML, CSS, and a little bit of JavaScript. Now, here are some features of the sign-up form. We have a clean aesthetic look of the form, and inside the input field, we have a floating label. And in the password field, we can hide or show the password. And also, we have some links from Font Awesome we are going to embed in this sign-up form. So if you are new to this channel and you are serious about improving your web development skills, whether it's HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, make sure you hit the subscribe button and leave a like on this video if it helps you out in one way or the other. Now let's get right into it. Here in the HTML document, we have a boilerplate for a standard HTML5 document. And inside this boilerplate and in the head section, you can have the title of the project, a script tag that I copied from Font Awesome because we are going to be using some icons over there, and a link to the CSS file, and also a link to the JavaScript file. In the CSS file, we'll have this line of code that I copied from Google Fonts because I'll be using the Poppins Fonts family. And also we have some root variables that I created for the colors of our form. This will make the styling easy. If we want to change any color, we just have to come here and change the color here, and it will apply to whatever elements that has this color. Then we have some global resetting properties for the margin, the pattern, and the box sizing. And in the JavaScript file, there is nothing here, but we put something here so that our sign-up form does exactly what we want it to. And that's all we need to get started. Now, in the body of the HTML document, first create a div with a class of container. This will be the containing div for all elements. Now, create an h1 element with an inner text of get started. And it appears over here when you refresh it. Next, you create a form element. And inside the form element, we'll have a div with a class of input field. In this input field div, we have an input first with a type of text and an ID of email. Then we add a required Boolean attribute so that we cannot submit the form until we enter something inside the input field. Still in the input field div, we have a label element, and make sure the value of the for attribute matches the ID attribute in the input field so that when you click on the label, we can enter the input field directly. Now the label should have an inner text of email. So when you click on this label, we enter the input field to start typing in the email. Now copy and paste this input field div 2 additional times so we can have 3 input fields, and change the second one for the full name. And the third div will be for the password field. So add the class name of password field to it. And then change the type of everything here to password. Then still in the password div, add a span element with an ID of span toggle. And what we want to do here is that we want to add a feature that will hide or show the password when we click on it. And I have a video explaining vividly how we can do this with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. There is a link in the description. You can go and watch it and continue from there. Now, outside the input field divs and still in the form element, create a button with a type attribute of submit. And this will submit the information we enter here when you click on it. It should have an inner text of sign up. That's it for the form. And then next, you create another div section with the class of login. And to have an inner text of already have an account, and then you log in. And the login should be wrapped in some anchor element because it will be a link and an inner text of login. Next, we add a footer element. And inside the footer element, we have a div section with a class of line. It will be empty, it won't have any inner elements. Then we have a p element with an inner text of sign up with. Next, we create a div section again with the class name of links, and this will hold our social media links to the various social media platforms. So copy and paste this A attributes 3 additional times so we can have 4 links. And then go to the website of fontsawesome.com. And we first search for the LinkedIn icon. Click on it and copy this I element and paste it into the anchor element over here. And we'll do same for the Google icon. Next, the Twitter icon, which is the new X icon. And lastly, we'll have the Apple icon. And they all appear here when you refresh it. So this will be it for the markup of our project. Now in the CSS file, let's add some styles to it. So we first target the body element. And we set the font family to the poppins we copied. And also we add a fallback font of sans serif. Next, we give the body a minimum height of 100 VH. And we turn it into a flex box by setting the display to flex. Set the justify content center. And align item center, so we can place it in the direct center of our viewport. Now we change the background color and we use the variable elements we created. So we set it to the deep black color. This is a deep version of black. But since we can't see our elements, we comment this out and we remove the comments later in the video. Next, we start a container class name. So with my class name of container, we add a border of 2 pixels solid and a padding of 10 pixels for the vertical and 20 pixels for the horizontal. Then we change the background of this container. Also a variable. This time we use the light black color. Then we can make the background appear over here. Set the maximum width of the container to 1200 pixels and the actual width of the container to 600 pixels. Turn it into a flex box by setting the display to flex, the flex direction to column, and set the align item center. Give the elements a gap of 10 pixels and also set the margin to 10 pixels for the vertical and 0 for the horizontal. Then we add a box shadow of 0 for the right, 0 for the bottom, and 2 pixels blur. And we use the variables, the root variable colors we added. And this time we use the white color. Then we add a border radius to rounding the corners of the container. Next, we start the H1 element here. So with my container class name, any H1 descendants, we increase the font size. Then we set the color to the white color here. Next, we start the form element. So the form element, we set the width to 80%. So it should be 80% of the container element over here. So let's add a border to see it clearly. And the white color. So this is our form element. It is 80% of this total width. Now let's start the input field class names or input field divs inside the form element. So with the input field class name, set the width to be 100%. This will be 100% of the total width of the form element, which is 80% of this. Now let's add a border to see it clearly. So 2 pixels solid, and you can see it now. Let's set the margin bottom to 15 pixels. Then the height should be 60 pixels. And set the position to relative. Next, in the input field, we style the input element. So in the input field class name, any input element, set the width to 100%, the height also to 100%, and add a padding of 12 pixels for the top, 0 for the right, 0 for the bottom, and 15 for the left. That is for the text inside it. And we increase the font size of the text. Then when you click inside, we want to remove the outlines. So set the outline to none. Then remove all borders. And the text color, we set it to the white color. Set the background to the deep black color, which is the color of the body. So now you can see our text inside the input fields. And you come back and remove the borders of the input field because we don't need it. Next, we start the label. So the input field div, any label element, which is a descendant, change the color to the gray color over here, this gray color. And set the position to absolute to take it out of the normal flow of the document or the input field div. And because we set the position of the input field div to relative, that means the label will stick to the input field div. Let's position it well by setting the top to 18 pixels and the left to 20 pixels. Now increase the font size and set the cursor to pointer so that when you mouse over it, we'll have a human hand. Now we want to add the floating label feature to it. And I have a video explaining exactly how to do that. There is a link in the description below. You can go and watch it. So with my input field, when you click on it, we target it with the focus pseudo class. And also when it is valid, because when you come into the input field, we have the required Boolean attribute. So it requires you to enter something. So far as you enter something, that means it is valid. So when I click on the input field, and also when the input field is valid, we want to make sure the label floats to the top over here. So with my input target the focus pseudo class, that is when you click on it, what happens to any labels, which is a sibling element, and we use a tilde sign to target the sibling element. And also in the input, when it is valid, what happens to the label element, which is a sibling of it. So initially the top is set to 18, so we set the top to 3 pixels and decrease the font size to 0.8 rem. And the font weight this time, we set it to bold. Now you can see that when you click on it, the label flows to the top. Now in the label, add a transition of 0.3 seconds. So we can have a smooth transition. Now let's work on the hide or show password feature, which is a span element in the password field over here. This span toggles span element. So with the password field class name, any span element, we add a before pseudo element to it. And the content of this before pseudo element, we go to the website of Font Awesome and search for the eye icon. And then copy this Unicode and paste it here with a backslash. Set the font family to Font Awesome 5 free. So that it can appear over here. I'll change the color to the gray color. And then we increase the font size of it. Then set the position to absolute to take it out of the normal flow of the input of the password field. And because the password field has the position property set to relative, then our eye icon will stick to the password field. Now let's position it well by setting the top positioning to 50% and transform property to translate y by negative 50%. And this will ensure that the icon will stay in the exact middle of it, these two code combinations. Set the right positioning to 20 pixels. Now set the cursor to pointer so that when you mouse over it, we have a human hand, as we can see. Now we go into the JavaScript file to add functionality for this. Now the first thing we do is to grab the input field, the input with the type of password, and the span elements over here. We grab them by their ID names and assign them to variables in the JavaScript file. So the ID of password for the input field. And we do same for the span toggle. Next, we add an event listener to the span toggle here. And the event is click. So when we click on it, we execute some function with the arrow code over here. When we click on the span toggle or the eye icon, we execute some function with the arrow function over here. So we first check the state we are in, whether we are in the password state or the text state. So we check the state and assign it to the variable state now. We get the attribute. And the attribute we want to get is a type attribute. So we get the type attribute of the password field here and assign it to the variable state now. And that will be the state of the password field. So now when the state is in the password mode or the type attribute is password, we hide whatever we enter here. But when we want to display it, we set the attribute to text. So after checking the state now, when you click on it, we use an if statement to check if the state now is equal to or strictly equal to the word password, the string password. If it is, then we likely want to go into the text state. So get a password, which is the input field, and we set the attribute. And the attribute we want to set is a type attribute. We set it to text. So that when you're in the password state where the info here is heading, when you click on this, we move to the text state where it now shows. And then we want to change this icon to a cancelled eye icon. So we add a class name of show to the toggle span. So the span toggle, we use a class list and we add a class name of show to the toggle span. Then we come back to the CSS file and set properties for when the span element has a class name of show. So when the span has a class name of show, you change the content of the before pseudo element to the cancelled I or the I slash, copy the Unicode, and with a backslash, paste the Unicode here. And you can see that when you enter something and then you click on this, the icon changes. I want to restore it when we are in the opposite mode. So we use the else statement and copy these two lines of code again. And we change this time the type attribute, we set it to password. And then we remove the show class name. So we enter a name or a password. When you click on it, it appears. When you click on it, it disappears again. So that's how to add a show or hide password. to your form elements. Next, we start the button in the form. So in the form element, any button elements, set the width to 100%. You increase the font size, and the font weight also, we bolden the text. And we add a padding of 20 pixels for the vertical and 0 for the horizontal. Next, we set the border to none and set the cursor to pointer. Change the background color to the yellow background color over here. Set the background to this yellow color here. And now when you hover over the button, we're going to add some properties with the hover pseudo class. So we decrease the size by using the transform property and scale it down to 0.95. Then we add a transition of 0.3 seconds. Next, we start a login div over here with the class name of login. So we increase the size of the text and the color, we set it to the gray color. Now let's start the anchor element in the login div. So remove the text decoration, which is the underline. Set the text decoration to none. And then we set the color to the yellow color over here. Now we style the footer element. So the footer element, let's add a border of 2 pixels solid so we can see it. Set the width to 100%, which is 100% of the container div. Then add a padding of 10 pixels for the vertical and 0 for the horizontal. Set the position to relative and set the display to flex to turn it into a flex box. The flex direction should be column. And set the align items center. Next, we start the div with the class of line. Set the border to 1 pixel solid and the gray color. Then set the width to 80% and set the position to absolute. So it will be taken out of the normal flow of the document. And the position top should be 30 pixels. Next, we start a P element in the footer. The footer element, any P elements, set the Z index first to 1 so it can display over this div section with the class name of line. And change the background to the light black background. the text color to the white color. Next, add a padding of 10 pixels for the vertical and 20 for the horizontal. And you can see it is in the perfect position. Now let's start the links div over here. So with the links class name, add a margin top of 20 pixels. The width should be 80%. And set the display to flex to turn it into a flex box. And set the justify content to space evenly. So we can have equal spaces between the flex items. Now in the links, we start the icon element here. With the links class name, any I element, increase the font size to 2.5 EM, add a padding of 10 pixels, 20 pixels, and the color we set it to the gray color. And then when you hover over our icons, you want to increase the size. With the hover pseudo class, use the transform property to scale the icons by 1.2. So when you hover over it, they increase in size. And you add a transition of 0.3 seconds so we can have a smooth transition. Now we go back into the footer element and remove the border because we do not need it. And this will be the final design of our sign up form. So yeah, that's how to create a simple sign up form using just HTML, CSS, and a little bit of JavaScript. I hope this video helped you out. And if it did, make sure to hit the subscribe button and leave a like on this video. And let me know in the comments what project you want us to do next. See you in the next tutorial.